Did you know there's a daily routine that takes just 20 minutes and can multiply your charisma so dramatically that people start seeking you out instead of you chasing after them? Neil Strauss, the master of seduction, discovered that it's not about complicated techniques or changing who you are, but about activating something you already have inside you that you've probably been blocking without realizing it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal exactly what that routine is and how to apply it starting today to completely transform the way people perceive and respond to your presence. The first revelation that changed everything for Neil Strauss was understanding that charisma doesn't come from what you say, but from what you don't need to say. While most people live in a constant state of reaction, jumping to defend themselves at any comment, justifying every decision they make, or desperately trying to impress others, truly charismatic people have mastered something completely different: the art of emotional control. Think about it for a moment. How many times a day do you react impulsively? Someone makes a sarcastic comment and you immediately feel the need to respond. They criticize you, and you automatically get defensive. Someone ignores you, and you start questioning your worth. Every time you react this way, you're giving away your power. You're giving that person control over your emotional state, and when you do that, your charisma disappears instantly. Neil Strauss explains it brilliantly. The moment you stop reacting emotionally is the moment you start acting strategically, and strategy always beats emotion. This isn't just a pretty phrase, it's a profound psychological truth. The most attractive and charismatic people you know aren't necessarily the smartest or the most beautiful. They're the ones who maintain their center, no matter what's happening around them. Imagine this situation. You're at a social gathering and someone makes a comment that's clearly designed to make you look bad in front of others. The natural reaction would be to defend yourself, explain your position, or counterattack. But a charismatic person does something completely different. They simply smile calmly, maybe pause for 2 seconds, and then respond from a place of complete tranquility, or even better, redirect the conversation to another topic without even dignifying the comment with a direct response. What happens in that moment? The entire room notices the difference. The person who tried to attack you looks small and insecure, while you project a confidence that's magnetic. You didn't have to say anything brilliant. You didn't have to prove anything. You simply maintained your power, and that was enough. Here's your first transformation exercise. For the next 3 days, every time you feel the urge to react defensively to any comment or situation, take 5 seconds before responding. Count mentally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then ask yourself, does this situation really deserve my emotional energy? 90% of the time, the answer will be no. And when you start applying this filter, your presence changes instantly. But here's the detail most people don't understand. It's not about becoming a cold or distant person. It's about consciously choosing when it's worth investing your emotional energy. A charismatic person isn't indifferent. They're selective. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they've learned to feel from a place of power rather than from a place of reactivity. And if it seems difficult at first, that's normal. We've been conditioned since childhood to react, to defend ourselves, to justify ourselves. But every time you break that pattern, every time you choose pause over reaction, you're training a new muscle. And that muscle is exactly what separates charismatic people from those who are always on the defensive. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point, because there's something even more powerful than emotional control, something Neil Strauss discovered that can transform any social interaction in your favor. The second revolution in charisma that Neil Strauss teaches has to do with a skill that goes completely against what we've been taught about human relationships: the art of letting go. Sounds contradictory, right? If you want people to feel attracted to you, shouldn't you make more effort, not less? Here's the truth that changes everything. Neediness is repulsive, but abundance is magnetic. Neil Strauss describes it perfectly when he says, the moment you don't need something from someone is exactly when that person starts needing something from you. Detachment isn't coldness, it's freedom, and freedom is irresistibly attractive. Think about the most charismatic people you know. Do you notice something peculiar about them? They don't chase, they don't beg for attention. They don't desperately cling to conversations or relationships. There's something in their energy that says, "I'd be delighted to get to know you better, but my happiness doesn't depend on it." And paradoxically, it's exactly that attitude that makes others want to be around them. The problem is that most of us have learned the opposite. We believe that if we care about someone, we must constantly demonstrate it. If we want a friendship, we must always be the ones to initiate conversation. If we like someone romantically, we must pursue until we get their attention. But every time you do this, every time you show that you need more than you receive, your charisma fades. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you meet someone interesting at a party. Most people would do this: get their number, send a message the next day, then another the day after that, call if they don't respond. Maybe show up on their social media with frequent comments. All of this sends a subliminal message. My emotional well-being depends on your response. A charismatic person does something radically different. They have a genuine conversation, exchange contact info if it arises naturally, and then live their life. If that person responds, excellent. If not, that's okay too. There's no anxiety, no neediness, no desperate energy. And you know what happens? The other person notices that difference. They wonder, why isn't this person chasing me like everyone else? And that curiosity becomes interest. This doesn't mean being indifferent or playing mind games. It means genuinely being okay with yourself, with your life, with your worth, regardless of what others do or don't do. Neil Strauss teaches that true charisma is born from emotional self-sufficiency. Here's your second transformational exercise. Identify a person in your life with whom you feel you're always the one initiating contact, putting in more effort, showing more interest. For the next 7 days, don't initiate any conversation with that person. Don't post on their social media. Don't send messages. Don't make calls. Simply live your life and respond normally if they reach out. But don't be the one to make the first move. I guarantee one of two things will happen. Either that person will notice your absence and start seeking you out more actively, or you'll realize the relationship was completely one-sided and you can invest that energy in more reciprocal connections. Either way, you'll gain clarity and, more importantly, reclaim your personal power. But be careful. This isn't about manipulation or playing hard to get. It's about developing genuine internal abundance, where you don't need external validation to feel complete. When you reach that state, your charisma multiplies exponentially because people can sense that you're operating from a place of fullness, not scarcity. And speaking of internal abundance, if you really want to take your charisma to the next level, you need to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because the secrets coming up are going to completely transform how others perceive you. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point, because there's a third element of charisma that Neil Strauss considers the most underestimated of all. The third pillar of magnetic charisma that Neil Strauss revealed has to do with something that goes completely against today's culture of oversharing: the transformative power of mystery. In an era where everyone posts every detail of their life, where every thought becomes a social media status, where we feel compelled to explain every decision we make, truly charismatic people have discovered something powerful. What you don't reveal is as important as what you do reveal. Neil Strauss explains it brilliantly. Mystery isn't lying about who you are, it's carefully choosing which parts of yourself you share and when. A predictable person can never be truly attractive because attraction is born from curiosity, and curiosity requires that there be something to discover. Think about it this way. When you meet someone for the first time, and that person immediately tells you their entire life story, all their problems, all their future plans, all their opinions about everything, what happens? You feel overwhelmed and, honestly, a little bored. There's nothing left to discover, no layers to explore. It's like reading the ending of a book on the first page. On the contrary, when you meet someone who shares enough to create connection but maintains a certain air of mystery, something happens in your brain. You're left wanting to know more. You wonder what stories are behind that subtle smile, what experiences have shaped their perspective, what dreams they keep tucked away. And that curiosity transforms into fascination. But here's the mistake many people make. They confuse mystery with being secretive in a dramatic or artificial way. It's not about making up false stories or acting like an international spy. It's about something much more subtle and powerful, the art of gradual revelation. A charismatic person doesn't tell the whole story at once. If someone asks about their work, they don't list every responsibility and every detail of their career. They say something intriguing but incomplete. I help people discover things about themselves they didn't know they needed to discover. If they ask about hobbies, they don't make an exhaustive list. They say, I love getting lost in activities that challenge my mind in unexpected ways. Do you notice the difference? Each answer creates more questions. Each answer invites deeper exploration. And the more someone has to work to get to know you, the more valuable that information becomes to them. Let me give you a practical example of how this works in real conversation. Imagine someone asks you, "What did you do this weekend?" The typical response would be, "Well, Saturday I slept in, had breakfast at that corner cafe, went to the grocery store, then watched Netflix all afternoon. Sunday I cleaned my apartment and talked on the phone with my mom." Complete information, but completely boring. A charismatic response would be, "I had a fascinating conversation with a stranger that made me rethink something important about myself." Pause. Subtle smile. Now the other person is intrigued. Who was the stranger? What conversation? What did you discover about yourself? You have their complete attention, and they've had to invest mental effort in you. Your third charismatic transformation exercise is this. For a complete week, practice the art of the incomplete response. Every time someone asks you a question about your life, your work, your plans, or your experiences, respond in a way that's honest but intriguing. Give enough information to keep the conversation flowing, but not so much that there's nothing left to discover. It's not about being evasive or difficult. It's about turning every interaction into an opportunity to create genuine curiosity. And when people feel curious about you, they feel naturally drawn to you. Neil Strauss also teaches something crucial about this. Mystery must be accompanied by substance. You can't be mysterious about an empty life. Mystery only works when there's something genuinely interesting to discover. That's why it's so important that you invest in yourself, develop real passions, live meaningful experiences, cultivate unique perspectives. When you have a rich and multifaceted life, maintaining mystery becomes natural because there genuinely are many layers that can be gradually explored. And that combination of real substance with gradual revelation is exactly what creates irresistible charisma. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point, because there's a fourth element that Neil Strauss considers absolutely critical for developing authentic charisma. The fourth foundation of irresistible charisma that Neil Strauss teaches is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all: the revolution of putting yourself first. This goes directly against everything we've been taught about being a good person. We were told that being selfish is wrong, that we should always think of others before ourselves, that sacrificing ourselves for others is noble and virtuous. But Neil Strauss discovered something that completely changes this perspective. You can't give what you don't have, says Strauss. If you don't prioritize yourself, if you don't fill your own cup first, you'll end up giving from a place of emptiness, and that doesn't benefit anyone. The most charismatic people have understood that self-love isn't selfishness, it's responsibility. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you constantly put yourself second, when you always sacrifice your needs for others, when you never say no to requests that drain you, you're not becoming a more loving or generous person. You're becoming someone resentful, exhausted, and paradoxically, less capable of contributing positively to others' lives. And more important for our topic, you're becoming less attractive. Why? Because people can sense the energy of someone who doesn't value themselves. They can perceive when someone operates from desperation to be accepted rather than from confidence in their own worth. Think about the most charismatic people you know. Do you notice they have clear boundaries? They're not available to everyone all the time. They don't say yes to every invitation or request. They don't constantly sacrifice themselves for others. And paradoxically, it's exactly because of this that people respect them and want to be around them. A person without boundaries is like a restaurant that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and gives away free food. At first it might seem generous, but quickly people would start taking that availability for granted. There would be no anticipation, no perceived value, no respect for what it offers. On the contrary, a person with healthy boundaries is like an excellent restaurant that opens only certain days, at certain hours, and charges appropriate prices for quality food. People make reservations in advance, value the experience, and recommend the place to others because they know it's special. Neil Strauss teaches that prioritizing yourself doesn't mean being cruel or insensitive. It means recognizing that your time, your energy, and your attention are valuable resources that should be invested wisely. It means understanding that when you take care of your own physical, emotional, and mental well-being, you have more to genuinely offer others. Let me give you a concrete example of what this looks like in real life. Imagine your phone rings at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's a friend who wants to vent about the same relationship problem they've been talking about for months, but about which they never take action to change. The response from someone without boundaries would be, "Of course, talk to me, I always have time for you." And then spend the next hour listening to the same story, giving the same advice that's never implemented, while sacrificing their own rest and peace of mind. The response from a charismatic someone with healthy boundaries would be, "I care about you a lot and want to support you. Right now isn't a good time for me, but we can talk tomorrow after work when I can give you my complete attention. How about we talk at 6 p.m. Do you notice the difference? There's no rejection, no coldness, but there are clear boundaries and respect for their own needs. And something interesting happens when you start communicating this way. People respect you more, not less. Your fourth charismatic transformation exercise: for the next 5 days, practice saying no in a kind but firm way to something each day. It could be an invitation that doesn't excite you, a request that would drain your energy, or simply choosing to stay home when you prefer to rest instead of going out due to social obligation. Observe how you feel internally when you honor your own needs. Observe how others react when you establish clear boundaries. You'll be surprised to discover that most people respect someone who knows how to value themselves more. But here's the key: prioritizing yourself must come from a place of genuine self-love, not from fear or resentment. Neil Strauss emphasizes that when you prioritize yourself from self-love, your energy changes. You become more generous when you choose to give, more present when you choose to be available, more authentic in all your interactions, and when you operate from this place of internal fullness rather than emotional scarcity, your charisma multiplies exponentially. People can sense that you don't need anything from them, that your happiness doesn't depend on their approval, and that emotional independence is magnetically attractive. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point, because there's a fifth and final level of charisma that Neil Strauss considers the most transformative of all. The fifth and most powerful principle of charisma that Neil Strauss teaches is what he calls magnetic presence. The state where your simple existence in a space changes the energy of that place. It's not something you do, it's something you are. It's not words you say, it's a frequency you emit. And when you reach this level, the world literally starts treating you differently. Neil Strauss describes it like this: true charisma isn't about impressing others. It's about being so comfortable with yourself that others automatically feel comfortable with you. It's an energy that says, "I'm okay being exactly who I am," and that gives you permission to be exactly who you are too. This is profound because it goes beyond techniques or strategies. It's about a fundamental transformation in how you relate to yourself and, by extension, to the world. People who have reached this level aren't trying to get something from every interaction. They're not constantly measuring whether they're being interesting enough, funny enough, attractive enough. They're simply being. And here's what's magical. When you don't need anything from an interaction, when you're genuinely okay regardless of how it turns out, people can feel that freedom. And that freedom is contagious. It creates a space where others can relax, be authentic, and connect in deeper ways. Think about this. Have you ever been with someone who seemed completely comfortable in their own skin? Someone who wasn't trying to impress you, wasn't acting to get your approval, wasn't measuring every word before speaking? Do you remember how you felt in that person's presence? Probably more relaxed, more yourself, more able to be authentic. That's magnetic presence in action. It's not performative charisma where someone is on all the time, constantly telling jokes or trying to be the center of attention. It's a quiet, solid charisma that comes from deep self-acceptance. Neil Strauss teaches that to reach this level, you need to make peace with all parts of yourself. That means accepting your strengths without arrogance and your weaknesses without shame. It means understanding that you don't have to be perfect to be valuable. You don't have to have all the answers to be interesting. You don't have to always be on to be attractive. Let me give you an example of how this manifests in real life. Imagine you're at a dinner with several people and someone makes a joke at your expense. The typical reaction would be to laugh nervously, counterattack with another joke, or get defensive. But someone with magnetic presence does something different. They smile genuinely, maybe laugh at themselves if the joke is funny, and then continue the conversation without emotional charge. There's no drama, no defensiveness, no need to win the exchange. There's just a person who's so comfortable with themselves that they can receive humor at their expense without it affecting their internal balance. And everyone at the table notices that stability. They respect that quiet confidence. Your fifth and final charismatic transformation exercise is the most challenging, but also the most transformative. For the next 2 weeks, practice being completely present in every social interaction you have. This means not planning what you're going to say while the other person is talking. Really listen. Not worrying about whether you're being interesting enough. Focus on being genuinely interested in the other person, not trying to control the impression you're making. Simply be yourself, completely, without apologies. This requires courage because it means letting go of control. It means trusting that who you are naturally is good enough. It means risking being vulnerable and authentic instead of acted and perfect. But when you start operating from this place, something magical happens. Conversations become deeper. Connections feel more real. People feel more drawn to you, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you give them the gift of your authentic presence. Neil Strauss teaches that this is the highest level of charisma because it's sustainable. You don't have to remember what to act or maintain a facade. You can be charismatic simply by being who you really are. And when you reach this level, charisma stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Before we continue, I want you to know something important. If this content is resonating with you, if you're starting to see how these principles can transform your social life, make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications, because we're going to keep exploring secrets of charisma and attraction that can completely change your life experience. And here's the deepest truth of everything we've talked about. True charisma isn't a mask you put on, it's a revelation of who you've always been. It's not about becoming someone different. It's about removing all the layers of insecurity, neediness, and acting that have been hiding your true self. Because when you finally allow yourself to be completely authentic, when you stop reacting from fear and start responding from confidence, when you let go of the need to control how others perceive you and start enjoying simply being who you are, something extraordinary happens. You become irresistibly magnetic. People can sense when someone is operating from authenticity rather than from acting. They can perceive when someone is comfortable in their own skin. And that comfort, that peace with yourself, that freedom to be exactly who you are, is the most attractive thing that exists in this world. Neil Strauss spent years studying the most advanced techniques of seduction and charisma, but his most important discovery was this: all the techniques in the world can't replace genuine comfort with yourself. And once you develop that comfort, you don't need techniques anymore. You become naturally charismatic because you're operating from your true power. So here's your daily charisma routine, the formula that can transform your presence in just 20 minutes a day. 5 minutes each morning, practicing the pause before reacting. Visualize yourself responding to challenging situations from calm rather than from reactivity. 5 minutes practicing healthy detachment. Remind yourself that your worth doesn't depend on others' approval, that you can love and care for people without needing anything from them. 5 minutes cultivating personal mystery. Reflect on the parts of your life and personality that you can reveal gradually, instead of sharing everything at once. 5 minutes, reinforcing your boundaries. Remember what you need to stay in your best state and commit to honoring those needs. And finally, 5 minutes simply being. Practice being present with yourself, accepting exactly who you are in this moment, without needing to improve or change yourself. Just existing comfortably in your own skin. This 20-minute routine, practiced consistently, can radically transform how others perceive you and how you move through the world. Not because you become someone different, but because you finally allow yourself to be completely who you are. And when that happens, when you finally embrace your own power and stop seeking external validation, the world responds in ways that previously seemed impossible. People feel naturally drawn to your energy. Opportunities start appearing without you having to force them. Relationships become deeper and more satisfying. But none of this happens by accident. It requires a conscious decision day after day to choose authenticity over acting, confidence over neediness, presence over performance. And here's my challenge for you. If you really want to transform your charisma and your presence, if you're ready to experience what it feels like to be magnetically attractive simply by being who you are, I want you to write in the comments this declaration. I choose to be authentically charismatic. I choose to trust my own worth. I choose to be irresistibly myself. Write that exactly, because when you put that intention in writing, when you declare it publicly, something changes in your psychology. You commit not just to me or to this channel, but to yourself to embark on this transformation. And if you really want to take this to the next level, if you want to keep discovering secrets of charisma and attraction that can change your social life forever, make sure to subscribe to this channel, turn on all notifications, and share this video with someone you know would benefit from this information. Because here's the final truth. Charisma isn't a gift that some have and others don't. It's a skill that anyone can develop when they understand the right principles and commit to applying them consistently. And now that you have these principles, the only question left is, are you ready to become the most magnetically attractive version of yourself? The world is waiting to meet the charismatic person you've been all along. It's time to let that person shine.